I would welcome Mayor Dinkins.
May I make this mic on? Is it live?
Mike? Everyone here? Mike?
This mic line, somebody in the back? It is or is not? It is, okay. May I make just a brief comment before you start the conversation? Because we're here in New York, I am frequently in the company of African diplomats at the UN and other places, and they have a custom, and instead of saying how nice it is to see Dr. John Plateau and Wally Ford and Roger Green and on like that, instead of that, the usual protocols observed. I mean, all you important people have been acknowledged. And each of you is important. I kid you not. First thing I ought to say is thank you, because without you, I never ever would have been elected the 106th mayor of this city. I was saying earlier to some friends here that sometimes the guy standing on third base will think he got there because he hit a triple. I know better than that. And there's a Marine out there who understands that. Semper Fi, good buddy.
Yes,
Yes, Lord. Anyway, I'm going to stop now and let you start the conversation, because if I don't, I'll go around the room. And there's so many of you here who've been so good to me in so many ways. There are those who served in our administration and really made the difference. I just, as I said to you earlier, I never ever have suggested that I was the smartest guy in the room. I know better than that. But I did have the good fortune of having many women and men who were very bright, dedicated, honest, who worked like mad, and they helped me look good. However, as they will tell you, I would say on occasion to them, now, you know I take your advice 90–95% of the time, but you got to remember that the Lincoln Rule obtained. They would say, what's the Lincoln Rule? And so Abe Lincoln would convene his cabinet, and he'd put a question and take a vote. They'd go around the vote. They said, nay, 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 nay. And Lincoln would say, the ayes have it. So it is important to keep that in mind. I'm going to shut up and try to be responsive to your questions. And I just want you to know how happy I am to see your mommy here, because she's younger than I am, but I think it's terrific that she came out. Yeah.
Thank you. Wanted to see you.
Your sister's all right too, but mom, see, we people, I try to tell folks that and this is not you, this is me, but if you're closer to 90 than you are to 80, you're old. And that's me.
Well, one of the things as I was reading the book, I thought about the fact that you really have over 7 decades of life as a public servant. And one of the things that really struck me is how strategic you've been and how persistent and dedicated you've been, no matter the obstacles. You've never let anything turn you down. Running for borough president 3 times, it's just amazing. So you talked about how you stand on the shoulders of many, and I'd like to begin the conversation by asking you to share how you came, as you came into public life, who were the people who really influenced you and had that major impact that guided you in this long career and helped you to be strategic and to be able to serve in the way that you've served?
Well, if you would suffer a long response to that question, my mother and father separated when I was about 6 or 7 years old, living in Trenton, New Jersey. And my mother came here to New York. Her mother was here, and they were domestics, and cooking and cleaning for folks for, I guess, $1 a day. Keep in mind, I was born in 1927, so I'm talking about the early 30s, I mean, the Depression years. And, we were poor, but I didn't know it, because I never went to bed hungry. My clothes were clean, because my mother and my grandmother scrubbed them, and didn't have holes in them because they sewed them up. And my mother and my grandmother never laid a hand on me except one time, and I'll tell you about that, because they would just look at me and say, "Dave, why don't you do this or why don't you do that? We work so hard." In about 30 seconds, I'd be in tears. Except one time. Some of you, one or two of you here old enough to remember skate scooters. There was a soapbox on a 2x4 with an old-fashioned roller skate on the front and on the back. But if you really were down, you know, you had to decorate it. And some people put bottle tops on it. But if you really were together, you put reflectors on it like they get from license plates. But you wouldn't buy them, of course. You'd liberate some from So we were out liberating some reflectors, and a police officer, black, in plain clothes, came along and he chased us, and I was the smallest, so he caught me, and said, I thought he was going to take me to jail. Instead of taking me to the precinct, he took me home to my mother and grandmother. They took all my clothes off, stood me up in the tub, and they beat me with straps. I have not stolen a reflector since. But I just was fortunate. So then I go back to Trenton because my father was better able to care for us because he was a barber. He started with one chair and grew it into 5 or 6, and he would rent chairs out to other people. Then he went to school and got a license to sell insurance and real estate, so he was doing all right. So, and I always thought my mother and father would get back together because they were very civil with one another. Sometimes we'd be together on special times like Christmas and like that. And then, well, I don't know, I guess I must have been in, I don't know, 8th or 9th grade or somewhere, and maybe even before that, but my father told me he was going to get married. I cried a week. But God is good. My stepmother taught English and drama. And she was terrific. She was like another mother. So then when I got married, my father-in-law was like another father. So I really, you know, like I couldn't miss. I had a lot of help. So in Trenton, there came a time when the war was going on when I was in high school. I finished high school in 1945. And so before we got to, I was going to turn 18, the 10th of July, 1945. And nobody gave a thought to not going to war, because this was not Vietnam where people going to Canada and stuff. And so I figured, well, the way to increase your chances of survival was to be well-trained. Because we go to the movies and you see the newsreels and you see the troops hitting the beach. And I said, wow. So I figured the way to be well-trained was to be a Marine, like Richard Green. So you all know Richard, right? That's my man. Youth Collective. So I set out to join the Marine Corps because there were no blacks at all in the Marine Corps prior to 1942. And so in Trenton, where I was then living, they had no recruiting office. So not in this order, but I went to Camden, Philadelphia, Jersey City, Newark, and New York. And I was told either you gotta go to the state of your residence, or they said, well, we have our quota of Negro Marines. So finally, I hounded the cat in Philadelphia so much that I think he felt sorry for me. So he let me fill out the papers, took the exam, and then he told me, he said, you all right? He said, you got high blood pressure. I said, that's some more of that damn discrimination. I know I don't have no high blood pressure. I stopped at the office, a doctor's office in Philadelphia, blood pressure normal. Came back to Trenton, went to our family doctor who had been an Army surgeon, blood pressure normal. Next day I go back down to Philadelphia, take my blood pressure on left arm, right arm, lying down, standing up, always high. Later we concluded that really what it was what they call white coat syndrome. You're so nervous that your blood pressure goes up. So the guy wrote a letter to my draft board and gave me a copy. He said, this man passes and selects the Marine Corps, put him in. Because otherwise, you stand up, if you could envision a queue of people, you step up to the table and the guy says, well, what do you want? You say, Army, Navy. What do you want? Navy, Army. Whatever you want, you get something else. So the only way to get what you wanted was to enlist. So that was the whole idea. And
so if we can move forward to the legislature.
all right,
Yeah,
well,
because in 1966, it was in 1966 when you joined the assembly?
yeah, but you got to understand how I got there that far. I went to Howard University. If you say it real fast, it sounds like Harvard. And I didn't want to go to college, but my stepmother had been a graduate of Howard University, class of 29, and her classmate was in charge of Veterans Affairs. And I'm discharged in August of 1946, and I said, well, it's too late. School starts in September. He said, well, I can get you in. And so I had pretty good grades in high school, and I don't think they had SATs or that kind of stuff way back then. At least I don't remember. Anyway, I get into Howard, but I didn't want to be there because I didn't want to be nowhere. I wanted to party. So for a year and a half, my motto was, don't let your education interfere with your recreation. And then they told me that you had to have a major, you had to have a concentration in some area. And I had more mathematics courses than anything else, so I became a math major. And Dr. David Blackwell, little cat about 5'2", soft voice, PhD from the University of Illinois at age 22. Just brilliant, brilliant. And he would never embarrass you. you didn't have the right answer, he would say, well, perhaps tomorrow you can go. He would make you go study. So then I became an honest to God student. And I did sufficiently well that I graduated with honors and won a fellowship to Rutgers University in math. Now, one day, we get into the
There's so much in this book. I just want to make sure that.
So now, I'm living in Trenton, and that's summer before going to Rutgers. I worked anybody could get a job if you really wanted to work. And I worked in the factory, and sometimes I work 8 hours and work a second 8 hours, not every day, but maybe 2 or 3 times a week. Saved my money so that when I got on the train to ride to New Brunswick, I wouldn't have to work. I could go to school. And so I got up there, and I was doing pretty fair. And then one day I stayed up half the night working on a problem, got what I thought was the correct answer, went to school. I went to the smartest person in the class, of course, was a woman. It really was. And I said, you get the answer number 2? She said, yeah, pi/3. I said, that's what I got. And then as an afterthought, I said, how long did it take you? She said, about 20 minutes. I worked all night. So I came home and I told my father, I said, Pop, I'm gonna drop out. He said, well, what are you going to do? I said, I don't know, but I know what I'm not going to do. So I decided to go to law school. Now, if there are any lawyers in the house, whether Esmeralda, this don't apply to you. See, but you don't need to be too smart to be a lawyer. That does not mean that there aren't some lawyers who are brilliant. You know, you don't have to be Johnny Cochran to be brilliant. You know? So I ended up in Brooklyn because Brooklyn was one of the few schools that would admit you if you had to work. NYU, some others would not. And plus I was a Dodger fan. So I went to Brooklyn Law School during the day and worked in a liquor store at night in Harlem. And then when I finished, I passed the bar right away because I got married August 30th, 1953. So I'm poor, and I just finished law school, so I still kept my job at night. I'd go down and put on a shirt and tie and go to the law office during the day. At night, I went up to the liquor store. And then there came a time when I could give up the night job, and I joined the political club. See, we're getting to the assembly. So now here I am, and I was a worker, and I got to be a captain in the political club. Now you join the political club because that was the networking of that day. And because maybe the cat who sat next to me in school, and I explained contracts law to him, and if he had a client, it was for a string of muffler shops. If I had a client, it was a lease, a short-term lease at that, on the corner candy store. Why? Because that's who I knew. So when I got to the political club, I learned that I could do, these cats can do this. I mean, I got a degree. I know I can do the same thing. So then in 1965, Ray Jones, known as the Fox, said, boy, you want to go run for the assembly? I said, I guess. So I ran for the assembly. It was an expanded year. John Flateau explained to you all apportionment. Because he understands, he's an expert. I'm kidding, I'm serious. He's an expert in apportionment. And he understands that stuff. Well, they had expanded the assembly from the constitutional 150 seats to 165, which created a seat for which I could run. So here I run. I don't know that we're not supposed to win, so we went out and won. And then the next year they contracted again back to 150, so I had no seat to run. So, but now I am hopelessly hooked on public service.
But while you were there, that was one of the things I found out was that you were one of the founders of the SEEK while you were there, the SEEK organization.
SEEK, yeah.
SEEK, Search for Education.
Elevation and knowledge.
And knowledge, and also one of the founders of the Black and Latino Caucus.
Well, that's true, but that's accurate, but I didn't do that alone.
No.
That was Percy Sutton and Shirley Chisholm and a whole lot of folks who came together. Do you need that? Yep. No, come on in.
Oh, you can't, I'm sorry.
So, in 1965, the things stood still in the state because of an inability of the Democrats, who were in the majority in the assembly, out of 150 seats, they had the majority, but they couldn't agree on who should be the speaker, Stanley Steingut or Anthony Travia, both from Brooklyn. So after, when nothing's happening, the speaker hires and fires all employees. Nothing happened. So Rockefeller was a Republican, was governor, got Republicans to vote for Travia. He became speaker. Now, it's now 1966. I'm there, Shirley Chisholm's there, Percy Sutton, Basil Patterson was in the Senate, and Charlie Rangel was working for the counsel to the speaker, a guy named Harold Fisher, also Brooklyn. And so Percy's, when we went in to see Tony Travia in the Hotel DeWitt Clinton, which was where the Democrats stayed, and Percy said, well, you know, we politicians too, we got to go home with something. And that's because you see, if they didn't have the black votes, they didn't have a majority of 165. So Percy and Shirley, they were our leaders, and I just went with the program. It made a lot of sense to me. Somebody said to Ray Jones, you know what that boy is doing up there in Albany? And Ray said, the kid knows what he's doing. So now, that's when the SEEK program was born. And there was an old timer named Burt Baker from Brooklyn. Some of you all might remember him. Burt Baker became the deputy whip. Now that is like next to nothing, but it was a big deal at that time. And some of you remember that Arthur Eve became deputy speaker. So then when that year ended, because it was a one-year term, I got nothing, but boy, did I want to go back to something.
And then you ended up continuing in politics.
Well, yeah,
City clerk and...
I guess the first thing I did after that was I became president of the Board of Elections. And it was different in those days. There were only 4 commissioners instead of the 10 they have today. But anyway, that was interesting work, and I enjoyed it. And then in 1977, Percy said he was going to run for the mayor. And no black person had run for mayor before. I said, really? He said, yeah. And so Percy was borough president of Manhattan. So I said, well, what about borough president? He said, you ought to run for that. But I think Percy said the same thing to 2 or 3 other people. So, because there were some people who thought that blacks running for 2 significant offices was not wise. They thought that would diminish the chances of the person running for the big office winning, because some people, to show that they were liberal, would say, well, that's all right, I voted for the borough president, and they vote for somebody white for mayor. I never agreed with that. To this day, I don't think that's true. I believe that the more people running for big offices, the bigger the turnout will be, and the increase your chance. Anyway, I ran for borough president. There were 4 of us in the contest. I finished 3rd. Then 4 years later, I ran and came pretty close to winning. And that was 1981, I guess. And then in 1985, I won. But it is significant, I say, that in 1984, I supported Jesse Jackson for president, and not everybody was there in 1984. Everybody there in 88. But 84, it was kind of lonely. So I ran and succeeded in 85 for borough president. And it's interesting to note that I supported Jesse in 88, 89 I got elected mayor. You go figure.
So just going back to while you were serving borough president and city clerk, there are a number of issues that you really saw needed addressing, such as the homelessness, diversifying the community school board. How did being city clerk and then borough president really prepare you to address the issues that you did in your tenure as mayor?
Well, the city clerk is also the clerk of the city council. Indeed, the city clerk is elected by vote of the city council. In those days, there were 35 members as opposed to the 51 they have today. And so I got the job, but there were the Republicans abstained. No, the Republicans, 1 or 2 Republicans voted against me, and Bobby Wagner and Henry Stern abstained. And the reason they gave to the public was I was overqualified for the job. And I had to promise that I would not practice law if I were going to be city clerk, and I didn't. I didn't practice law from 1975 until I got elected borough president in 85. So, but because of the city clerk's position, I knew what was going on all the time, because you're there in the city council chamber, and you got to, certify all the bills and all that kind of stuff. So and plus, during much of that time, I was the president of the Council of Black Elected Democrats, and I thought it was my job to go wherever some member of the group had an event. I thought that was what the president does, I thought. So the result was I made a lot of friends. I knew everybody in Brooklyn and Queens and naturally in Manhattan and so forth. And you asked what did it prepare me? Well, these kinds of things assisted me in achieving success later. But the big thing, though, in running for mayor, see, we had supported, by we, I mean black elected officials, had supported Ed Koch in a runoff in 1977. And then Vander Beatty, y'all remember Vander Beatty? Yes. Vander Beatty said he was going to support Cuomo. So Percy said, well, all right, we'll support Koch, because there was that tension between them. So, of course, Koch won. And he was a very liberal, progressive member of the city council and the Congress. And not bad in his first term, but he started moving more and more to the right. So we were looking for somebody to run against him. and they thought some people thought, I never know how to phrase this so it doesn't sound like I'm saying I was drafted. I wasn't drafted, but Bill Lynch, bless his heart, died too early at age 72. Bill Lynch was my campaign manager, and the unions that were supporting me said, you know, you need somebody who's done it before. Well, I knew what that meant. That meant that I should have somebody white. I'm serious, because nobody had done this before. Nobody had done it. And I said, yeah, but there are lots of hired guns. They're equally good. But I need somebody who believes in me, and that's Bill Lynch.
You're right.
So we won, and as a matter of fact, in the primary in 1989, I had 3 opponents: the incumbent Ed Koch, Dick Ravitch, who's done a great job with the MTA, and Jay Golden, longtime controller. And I say one of the most articulate guys I've ever encountered about municipal government. And so the conventional wisdom was that we wouldn't win, because even if I managed to finish first with 4 candidates, I would not get 40%. And in the runoff, the other 3, each of whom was Jewish, would gang up on me and I'd lose. Well, we got 51%. And then in the general election, we faced Rudolph W. Giuliani. And and we won. Now, but the margin was about the same as the margin by which I lost to him later. And in the book, I talk a little bit about some of the reasons. Now, some people would blame it on Crown Heights. Some people would blame it on a variety of things, but you may remember that there was an issue on the ballot for Staten Island to secede, which made no sense. If I loan you some money and you pledge your house, like a mortgage, then you can't go out and sell the roof to somebody. But how in the hell can you take Staten Island and secede from the rest of the city when you got billions of dollars of municipal debt out there? So I said, well, the assembly will never pass it. But Mel Miller was speaker of the assembly, and they did. And I said, that's all right. The governor never signed it, because Mario Cuomo is a legal expert, a legal scholar, and he knows that it's unconstitutional. You can't do that. But he did sign it. So I think that we came out of Staten Island 40,000 votes behind Rudy. I think that helped make the difference. Some people say, well, you didn't win because you just hadn't been a good mayor. And I said, well, it's your opinion.
One of the things some of the things that point out is you talk a lot in the book about the new projects, the U.S. Open, expanding the U.S. Open in Queens.
Stay with that.
Okay, yes, of course we got to stay with that.
No.
Yes, that was very significant.
I was accused of wanting to develop the tennis center in Queens because I'm a tennis player and I like tennis. But the fact is that Mike Bloomberg will tell you today that it's the best deal in the nation for a municipal stadium. Now, Rudy, it became a campaign issue in 1993 because Rudy said, I think, because he likes tennis and like that. But the fact is that it is such a good deal for the city that in the 2 weeks of the U.S. Open, it generates more revenue into the economy of the city than the Yankees, Mets, Knicks, and Rangers combined. The number is north of $700 million. Now, Rudy said it was a bad deal, and when I left office, that we had signed an agreement, a memorandum of understanding, but he tried to tear the deal up. He summoned the leadership of the USTA, the United States Tennis Association, to City Hall, but what he didn't understand was the guy who was chairman of the committee was a man named David Markin. He was a guy that owned the Checker Cabs. You all know Checker Cabs. And the president of the USTA at that time was Harry Marmion, who is a Marine. And he was a tough cat. He said, no. And so Rudy attempted, and his grounds for trying to among the things he thought would resonate with the public was that I had to agree that if planes flew over the stadium during the course of the tournament, there was a penalty that the city would pay to the USTA. But the stadium was built by the USTA, not city money, USTA money. But what I got in exchange for that, when I couldn't get away from it, they said it's a deal breaker, I got an agreement that the monies paid by the USTA to the city would be a percentage of gross, not net. How many times have you read in the newspaper about a dispute between the city and Shea Stadium or Yankee Stadium on how much money is due from the ball teams to the city? And that's why, because it's a percentage of net. This was gross. So it really is a good deal. So I'm happy and proud about that. It took, incidentally, as we speak, right now, technically January the 1st, but the next president of the United States Tennis Association is a black woman. Now get to that. Her name is Katrina Adams.
That's right.
She runs the Harlem Junior Tennis Program in the Armory up on 142nd.
That's right.
And she's terrific. And she was on the tour. She was a professional tennis player, went to Northwestern University. She is terrific. You can be proud of her.
You also led the effort in restoring Times Square.
I love to talk about that. Let me tell you what happened. There's a fellow named Carl Weisbrod who was the co-chair of de Blasio's transition committee. Well, he worked in our administration, and on the last day that we were in City Hall, by the last day, I don't know whether it was a Friday or what, whether it was December 30th or 29th or 30th, but the last day, by last day, I'm going to lock the door and hand Rudy the key. It's that much of a last day. And Carl Weisbrod came rushing into City Hall with a memorandum of understanding to be signed by the deputy mayor for Finance and Economic Development that created the Disney deal, which started the cleanup of Times Square. Now you'll find 3.5 people who know about that, but that's what happened. Now what would you do on the last day you're going to be on a job and you're going to be looking for a place to work next week? But he was on the case. So I've always been grateful to him for that. But that's what made the difference. We had people like Wally Ford. Folks don't know that our women and minority-owned business effort was spearheaded by Wally Ford. Not me. I had smart, good people doing the work.
You also had the Fashion Week and the Restaurant Week. All of those were your initiatives.
Right. But they were ideas brought to me by some very competent good people. And let me give you another idea. Basil Patterson, bless his soul, Basil was the chairman of our Judiciary Committee. Now, he didn't work in government, he didn't get paid anything, but he was the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, and he had a committee that would vet candidates for judgeships. The mayor appoints judges of the criminal court and the family court. And as many of you out there know, for us, that is often the court of last resort. You know, you go in the criminal court or family, that's it, man. You ain't appealing up to no Supreme Court or nowhere. That's it. So it's very important, the people that you put in those jobs. And Basil would, at his committee, they'd bring me such good people. If I had 2 openings, maybe they'd bring me 4 or 5. It didn't matter which one I picked, because they were all good. And so we had more minorities, more women, more gays than ever before. But it was because of Basil Patterson.
Okay, so we have, I'm going to take one more question, and then I want to encourage the audience. There's some cards going around, and you'll have a chance to ask Mayor Dinkins questions. So if you have a question, if you can take a card, and we will start that. But I'm going to ask a question that I asked when I interviewed you earlier, is we live in a society that's constructed by race, and although you always said you wanted to be a mayor for everyone, and not just a mayor, not be perceived as the mayor for black people, you had to deal with the fact that race entered the mayoral, your position as mayor. So how do you govern with integrity? How do you continue as a public servant when you recognize that you always are still dealing, in this country at least, with the fact that we have institutionalized racism?
That's a very important and significant question. I suppose we all recognize that we live in a racist society. We just do. And but keep in mind when I was born, and even in the Marine Corps, and our base was Montford Point Camp, Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. Tuskegee Airmen, I know you all know who they are, and black soldiers, Tuskegee Airmen and black Marines, or Montford Point Marines as they're called, because that's where we were trained, Montford Point Camp, Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. And they were treated, during the war, mind you, less well in the South than were German and Italian prisoners of war. Now this is the days of the white and colored water fountains and all of that stuff. So things are today not what they need to be, but thank God they're not what they used to be. We've come a long, long way. And I knew that, and I knew that some of the things that we did, I was accused of being motivated by racial considerations, but it just wasn't true. We tried to be as fair and as honest to all people as we could. And not just me, but the people with whom I worked. We had, I'm telling you, these were some really fine people. They were good. They were damn good. And that's why we got as much done as we did. And I'm will always be grateful to the folks with whom I worked. They were terrific. And you'll notice because now you are English, PhD in English and all that. You notice that I don't say that worked for me, that we worked together. And I'll say so-and-so was part of our administration. I ain't say he worked for me, because that's how I felt about it.
And that really comes across in your book. And as I was reading it, I was thinking about, as I faced challenges, I said, well, what would Mayor Dinkins do? Because you were very a master at knowing how to talk to people and being strategic and negotiating and listening. So I'm going to start now with the questions from the audience. One question is from a member of the audience. What is the most important thing facing our community today?
Well, not simply because we're here in this fine institution of learning, but I think education is it. Now, of course there's jobs and housing and all that, but it's all connected to education. If we can get our young people educated, we increase their chances of achieving a decent livelihood. It really makes a big difference. So if of all the problems, we got health care and housing and all the usual things with which we're concerned, I say the most important thing is education. And if nothing else, you can enjoy that which you have better if you are better educated.
Thank you. And our last question. What is, because we want to have time for you to sign books, what is your greatest achievement?
Well,
I'm sorry, that's not the last question.
well, I don't say that it's, some people may not see it the way I do, but one of the greatest moments of my life really was receiving Nelson Mandela here in 1990.
Chapter in the book.
I have to tell you, what an amazing man. I feel fortunate to have lived in his century. And when he came down the steps of that plane at JFK, it's difficult to describe what a wonderful feeling it was. And he stayed with us in Gracie Mansion, my bride and me, and he was always the same. Total absence of bitterness. Now, who among us wouldn't walk around just snarl, but not him. And he was the same with playing with my grandchildren. And one of my favorite pictures I have of him is he's holding our granddaughter, Kalila. And Kalila was born in February, and this was June. So she's a little bitty thing, and he's holding her. And whether he was being questioned by Ted Koppel, who you may remember seeing on television, Ted Koppel, who was questioning him, he said, "But Mr. Mandela, the communists," and Madiba said, "They were the only ones that helped us. Next question."
One of the things a couple of people have asked about is your plans now. What are your plans for the future?
Well, I've got to figure out how to get the rent paid. But very seriously, think about this. The mayor is unlike, you're not the president or vice president, you don't have security forever, you don't have a huge pension. Such pension as I have is because I have a total of 20 years. If you add the time in the assembly, the time of the delegate to the Constitutional Convention in '67, and 10 years as city clerk, 4 years as borough president, 4 years as mayor. When you add all that up, I got 20 years, so I got not a whole lot of money, but I got a little bit of a pension. And because you get an option, and I selected one that would pay my wife some money if I predeceased her. If I had selected a different option, I would get a little more money now. But keep in mind, here I am, borough president, and happy being borough president. Ran 3 times before I won.
Amazing.
And there's Um, In those days, they had a board of estimate. I won't bore you to take you through what that is, but some of you out there remember. Certainly John Flattoe knows about it. And so borough president it's important today, but it is more bully pulpit than anything else. In those days, you had a vote on the board of estimate. The board of estimate had a vote on the budget and land use, and it was really a big deal. Now, I run for mayor. If I lose, I got 0. After running 3 times for borough president, I have 0. But my bride said, if you think that's what you want to do, go for it. And so we did, and as they say, the rest is history. But it really, I'm just a very fortunate fellow. And you ask me, what am I going to do now? Election night, well, first of all, election day, we had a press conference at City Hall, because here in Brooklyn, some white off-duty police officers were questioning people in line to vote, saying, you have been arrested, you have a driver's license. Totally irrelevant to whether or not they were qualified to vote. So we had a press conference about that. Now it's election night. We have lost. I got to make a concession speech, and some of the people, we demand a recount and stuff like that. And so, a buddy of mine, Peter Johnson, said, "Dave, this is how we show them what we're made of." So I said, "In this country, we don't have coups and revolutions. We have elections. Mayors come and mayors go, but the city must endure." I was a real statesman. Next morning, I looked at my bride. I said, you know what? We got less than 60 days. So keep in mind, elections in November, right? So, and you're out of office January 1st. So less than 60 days to get out of Gracie Mansion, find a place to live, a means to pay the rent, and simultaneously transition an entire government in a professional fashion, lest they say, see, you let them people in and look what they do. So, but I'm lucky. Percy Sutton called me and said, how'd you like to do a radio show? And I said, yeah, that would sound great. He said, well, yeah, it'll be 2 hours live. We'll pay you X. And I said, well, he's okay, X plus. Vernon Jordan called me and said, Dave, Ron Perlman's going to call you. Now, I don't know Ron Perlman. I know who he is, Revlon. But I've never met him. I didn't know him. He said, he's going to call you. He'll make you an offer. He said, he'll call you and ask to see you. He'll make you an offer. Take it. Okay. Sure enough, Ron Perlman came to Gracie Mansion with one of his aides and made me an offer. I got to be a consultant, which I got paid. Gave me a small office and a seat on one of his boards, not Revlon, but one of the other ones. And I was there that for, I don't know, 7 or 8 years. And in fact, I had an office right next to Andy Stein, who had been a political opponent of me over the years. And then Peter Johnson, who was a big help to me throughout our whole administration, never made 2 cents being associated with me. But he said, Dave, you ought to think about teaching at Columbia. I said, Peter, I haven't practiced law since 1975. He said, no, SEPA. I said, what's SEPA? School of International Public Affairs. So we went up to Columbia, and in 2 days, I mean literally 48 hours, we met with the president of the university and the dean of the school, I just sat there looking stupid with my mouth hanging open. And Peter said, well, the former mayor, you gotta make at least this much. The former mayor gotta have an office. The former mayor, That's now been 20 years, and I love it. First of all, I like young people.
All right, I think that's our last question. We want to give Mayor Dinkins a round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you all very, very much. You warm an old man's heart.
I know, are you going to line up to have your book signed? Are you going to line up over here to have the book signed?
They're gonna call numbers.
When's this close? There's a lot of questions.
Should have received. Wait. Everyone should have received a red ticket when they purchased the book. If everybody seated, and we are going to call the numbers on the tickets in groups of 10.
All right, Doctor, can I? Take your time. Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Those of you who have books, you want them signed, right? You want your books signed? Would you kindly sit down? We're going to do that. The mayor will be glad to sign your book.
This.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Hello? You want to sit down, please? Those of you who want your book signed, would you kindly be seated? While we're waiting, while everybody's getting ready to get your book signed, I just want, excuse me, we didn't close yet. While we're waiting, as I said, those of you who have books to be signed, the mayor will be happy to sign your book. So would you kind of sit for a few seconds, just a few minutes, and it's organized so that you all can get out of here fast. So in the meantime, I want to thank all of the volunteers. Where are they? I know they're scattered around. I want to thank all the volunteers, and I want to especially thank Fred Price and William Boone from the college who assisted us this evening with the hosting. So you're going to sit now. We're going to call you by your number. Don't you have cards in your hand?
These are the red tickets that I'm referring to. So the line is going to come down that aisle over here. And Mayor Dinkins will be at the table at the bottom of the...
Okay, in the meantime, we want to ask you to come up so that
the first group is...
Wait, don't pause. Hold it. And ready? No, we're not ready.
Okay. Hello. Can you hear me? Yes. This is Medgar Evans College, and we do things in decency and in order. So will you please sit down? Those of you who are next to sit, please sit down. Siéntate, por favor. Asseyez-vous.
I
I give it to you in French and in Spanish. Please, this is the Queen's English. Kindly sit down. Please sit down as we are about to close this beautiful program. We're ready to take in our seats. Whoever forgot the hearing aid at home? Somebody forgot the hearing aid? Okay. All right, as you're told, my name is Agnes Abraham, and I'm a proud graduate of Medgar College. I represent two bodies tonight. I'm a parliamentarian for the Medgar College Community Council, but I'm also the representative for the United People's Inclusive under the leadership of Elder Austin Hewitt. We call him Elder T. As we are about to close, we're getting ready to do the benediction. For those of you who believe with me. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, Thou who has brought us thus far on the way, we thank you for Mayor Dinkins, O God, and we thank you for the foresight and the insight of the Medgar College Community Council. Many who toiled have gone on before us. We are thankful for the remnant that remains under the leadership of Katie Davis, under Maslin Walter, under Ann Bush, and Edina, and all of the other members of the council. We thank you for President Crew and for the present students and his administration, those who are here, those who left, and those who are coming. As we ask you, O God, to send down your Shekinah glory on this place, give us, O God, the same vision you gave to Jabez, enlarging the territory of Medgar College, that when the history of Brooklyn will be written, Medgar will be a force to be reckoned with. Thank you, O God, for all what you do for and on our behalf. We praise you that you do all things in decency and in order. Remember us as we go to our homes. Bring us there in peace and in safety. We give you thanks in Jesus' name. Amen.
Dinkins has taken his seat. We're going to form the line on the left-hand side of the table.
You have transport home?
And the numbers will begin.
Are you leaving
You're
now?
going to take your numbers
With her.
so that they know
Right with
you
her.
have the number that we called. 835.
Agnes, Dr.
I call
City.
the last three digits.
Yeah. I'm going to get a car. So I'll meet you outside to the front of the building. Right, okay?
Excuse me, we're gonna clear the aisles, or you have your number been called?
Are you calling the number right in? 834.
You have the... When your ticket's called, if your ticket number was called, you're
Yeah,
up.
we're trying to call them in consecutive order.
Right. If your ticket number was not called, please sit.
Why is it starting with the number? 832, 831, 8. 8:30, 8:29, 8:28, 8:27, and 8:26.
But none of those people online have the tickets.
Tell her.
Excuse me, hello, hello.
I gotta go find my books now.
I'm sorry, I'm not trying
That will be the quickest way for you to have your votes. Please sit down. We only want 5 to 10 people at the mayor's table at a time. The tickets were issued in descending consecutive order. Descending order. So please do not be alarmed if you think you have a lower number, but it was not called. The raffle wheel was in descending consecutive order. I would ask if you could kindly take your seats until your number is called. The mayor will sign his name only. That will be the personalization, the mayor's signature only.
Let me give my
I'll be there tomorrow night. I'm going tomorrow night.
This is the video.
Number 825, 824, 823, 822, 821, 820,